Meeting. We'll call roll first, or do the? Okay, I'm going to begin with roll call, and then we have to vote on who's going to chair this meeting because Councilmember Roten is under the weather. So chair is absent. Allen here. Benedict. Not here yet. Druffel here. Evans. Absent. Gamble. Absent. Hurt. Present. Johnston. Mendez. We know that. Pulley. Yep. Sledge. Not here yet. Sawara. Not here yet. Syracuse. Toombs. Here. Van Reese. Here. Bircher. She's short, but I don't think I see her. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is a quorum. So we can begin the meeting. Officially, we have to, because the chair and the vice chair are both absent, I have been asked to run this meeting, but we need to have a vote on that to make it officially okay. You guys are great. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, off we go. So I'll begin with the consent calendar. Items currently slated for consent are RS 2023-1936, RS 2023-1937, 1938, and two bills, BL 2023-1635 and BL 2023-1636. Do any of those items need to come off consent? And then I need to recognize Mr. Honeysucker for an update on waste. I apologize, I got ahead of you again, but you're next. Any items need to come off consent? I'll read those titles, we'll vote on that, and then we'll get an update from regarding our waste. So the items on consent are RS 2023-1936, sponsors Roten and Syracuse, approves an application for a violent crime intervention fund grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration, Office of Criminal Justice Programs to the Metro Department, Police Department to provide funding related to response to and reduction of violent crime in the community, and for technology updates, police support, and implementation of the Group Violence Intervention Program. RS 2023-1937, sponsors Roten and Pulley, approves an application for a strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to the Nashville Department of Transportation and multimodal infrastructure to use video and other sensor data to identify safety issues outside of traditional crash reports, implement targeted safety measures, and evaluate these measures to downtown Nashville's complex multimodal environment. And I do see Councilmember Sawara is here. Next on consent is RS 2023-1938, sponsors Roten and Pulley. This approves an application for the Advanced Transportation Technologies and Innovative Mobility Deployment Grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to the Nashville Department of Transportation Multimodal Infrastructure to develop a fully instrumental advanced transportation management system with transit signal priority technology along Gallatin Pike to reduce congestion in that corridor. And those are the resolutions on consent. The two bills are BL 2023-1635, sponsors Tomb, Roten, Withers, and Pulley. This approves a participation agreement between the Housing Division of the Metropolitan Planning Department and Urban Housing Solutions to provide enhanced pedestrian signaling for UHS's proposed development as well as other existing properties in this area. And BL 2023-1636, sponsors Johnston, Roten, Withers, and Hurt, which approves the Fourth Amendment to the lease agreement between the Metropolitan Government and the Nashville Zoo for the conveyance of property via quitclaim to the Metro government and participation agreement for the construction of a facility parking garage. Do any of those items need to be pulled off of consent? Councilmember Sawara. Oops. Which item?
Thanks, Chair. BL 2023-1636, please.
1636 is off consent. Okay, so we are left with RS 2023-1636, 1637, 1638, and BL 2023-1635 are on consent. Any other comments on the consent agenda? If no, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda and a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? No. That's 9 in favor, right? 9 in favor, 0 against for the consent agenda. Let me make a note of those. 9, 4, and and 4. Okay, so now we'll go back to the items that are not on consent. No, now we will recognize Mr. Honeysucker to give us an update on waste. I apologize for missing that when coming through. Mr. Honeysucker, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon and Happy New Year to you all. John Honeysucker, Assistant Director of Waste Services. I know last week was a very challenging week for us all with the weather. I brought my Sharon Smith and Robert Grady here to kind of update you on the on waste and any questions you might have about the water system.
All right, thank you all so much. So as you're aware, we had some very exciting weather over Christmas. The Friday before Christmas, extremely cold weather made it very difficult for us to allow our staff actually to even be outside. I believe there was a 30 minutes you start getting frostbite. And then, of course, Monday we had the exciting snowstorm. So overall, we've really had more fun than we deserve. But it did end up being about a third of our customers didn't get collection on their collection day, which, as you can imagine, caused somewhat of a ripple effect. We feel like we're really, we were largely caught up on Friday. There's still a little more pockets here and there. With some of you all here in council letting us know areas that were missed, which we really appreciate because sometimes we don't necessarily get those through the hub. Some people are really good about reporting to the hub and some people aren't, but we've appreciated everyone's patience during this unique weather at a really unfortunate time of year where, over Christmas, people have so much stuff they're setting out, whether it be trash or recycling. So if you all have any questions, and also Robert Grady, who's the one making sure it's actually happening, is here with us.
Any questions? Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, and thank you for being here and for the great work that you did throughout the holiday. I know that it wasn't easy. I guess the question that I have is like an observation. I always notice that anytime we have anything that is off in the city, water, trash, electricity, Southeast is affected the most. And it always takes a longer time for those people to be taken care of. So what are we doing about that? And I mean, is there any particular reason? And is that something that you all are actually focusing on and trying to find a resolution to?
So in this event, it was the Antioch people, which were the Friday, and then the East Nashville Donaldson people that were the Monday, that were the largest impact. Our focus was trying to get to Friday first because that part of Nashville has historically had issues. So while trying to stay caught up Tuesday through Friday and also going back, all of our contractors went back as much as they could. We actually sent our own, Robert Grady sent crews out Saturday to help specifically make sure that South Nashville was taken care of. But this was a really unusual sort of situation at a holiday. The bookends of the weekend, which just made it so much worse than if it had been, for example, a Wednesday in the middle of the week. But I really was very disappointed to see that, once again, it hit on a Friday and that impacted our folks in the south part of Nashville.
And so when we have something like that happen, like on a weekend, so the people on Friday got impacted, when we resume activities, do we start with the people that are Mondays or do we go back to those Fridays first?
Yeah, it really depends on how far behind you get, because there's sort of a, almost like a little mini tsunami. So if we had only had Friday as a delay, we would probably have gone back and started Friday. But once you get 2 days behind, the quickest thing to do is start. So we started Tuesday with Tuesday, and then extra trucks and equipment went back to address so that you keep the people that are up to be picked up next current while trying to catch everybody else up. It's not ideal, but that's usually what cities have to do when you get multiple days behind. If you keep going back, then you actually end up causing everybody to be delayed even further. So our strategy was, and this is how we usually handle it when it's multiple days, you start the next day. So Tuesday, we started with Tuesday, but we immediately started going back and trying to address Antioch. We couldn't do it in a huge wave, but Metro trucks and all of our contractors were instructed, you stay with Tuesday, but anything you can get, any extra resources you can send back. And so what we ended up seeing was sort of a slow collection throughout the whole week, all the way up until, because there was a part of Antioch that didn't actually get picked up until Saturday, one little area. And so it was just all week trying to get caught up. And then, of course, today we learned from some council members like Council Lady Porterfield of streets that had been missed. When something like this happens, it kind of throws everything off. And it causes our operations folks like Robert here to kind of struggle through the whole week, trying to stay caught up, get everybody caught up, back on schedule, and trying to communicate with folks to know, hey, just keep it out there. We're going to get it. And I think that some point through the middle of this week, we're going to see all of those pockets of missed areas getting picked up. And if anybody reaches out to you and says, we haven't been picked up yet, please let me know, because there are a lot of people that don't report to the hub. And if they don't report to the hub, then we don't realize it's an issue.
Okay, well, thank you. I just don't want to belabor it. It's just that when you do the Tuesday, Wednesday, the people that were missed Friday were delayed longer because it was an holiday, became a real issue. And so I think, I hope this doesn't happen again, but if it does, we need to look at a strategy about getting the people caught up first. The people that will be missed on Tuesday will just be missed one day. But the people from Friday, you're looking at 5-6 days. And I think that just doesn't speak very well. So just wanted to point that out. I got a lot of calls and conversations, and I felt like, why is it always Southeast? And why does it have to 4-5 days? And I know you're doing all you can. I know, please do know that I appreciate that. But I think from the side of the constituents that these are impacting during the holiday, especially with what they had to go through with electricity and water and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Adding trash to it was just too much.
Yeah, it was a lot with the rolling outages and everything. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hurt, and we have a crowded agenda today, so if we can try to be speedy, that would be great. Councilmember Hurt.
I'm just going to stand in the same vein that Councilmember Suara has commented, because it does throw it all off. And in my opinion, Southeast seems like they're the new North Nashville, because North Nashville used to be neglected historically on every hand in situations like this. And now we see the same thing happening in Southeast. And I think that that's also where you look at the concentrated issues, poverty, all of those things that have been historically neglecting communities. And I think that we need to let those people know that we've not forgotten them. And when you continue to push them on the back burner and other people don't feel that same type of pain, it just seems to be just a little bit more difficult for those communities to receive and accept it. And we need to make sure that we don't forget any community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank y'all so much, and thanks for all the work y'all did over the holidays.
Do you have any, did anyone have any questions in regards to the water, anything like that?
Any questions about water? Are all the breaks dealt with at this point, Mr. Honeysucker?
Yes.
I see a head nodding.
I did get a yes. Yes.
All right. Well, for all those guys that were out there in the cold fixing water, we really appreciate it. That's not a fun time to be out
Thank you all.
dealing with wet things. Thank you. Thank you for the update. Okay, with that, we'll move on to other items not on consent, starting with RS 2022-1901, sponsors Roten, Johnston, Syracuse, and others. This adopts the fund balance reserve policies for the Metropolitan government. This resolution needs to be deferred to track with the ordinance. To have a motion for a deferral. Been moved and seconded. Any comment on the deferral or the resolution? All right, so we are deferring one meeting. And we're still at 9, right? 9 in favor, 0 against, anyone not voting? Okay. Next is RS 2022-1902, as amended already, sponsors Van Rees, Benedict Young, and others. This approves an economic impact plan for the Madison Station Economic Development Area. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. I understand we have another amendment for another typo. Councilmember Van Rees.
Yes, thank you very much. I need to move the additional amendment to correct a typo and make a little bit clearer what was stated.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on a 75-page amendment for a typo.
Yeah, sorry. Well, it's shorter now.
It's
I think
shorter
it was 120 before. So
Progress.
We made it shorter. So I move approval of the amendment.
Amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Any opposed? All right, we vote yes on the amendment, and your motion, your bill is amended.
Yes, I wanted to thank those that submitted some questions from our last meeting. I believe that they were all appropriately addressed. And we have folks here, if there are additional questions, happy to hear it. But otherwise, I move approval.
All right, are there any questions on the tax abatement? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Anyone not voting? All right. Next is RS 2023-1934. Do I have a letter from the sponsor? The sponsor is here, sorry, thank you. Sponsor is Bradford, expresses the council intent for the parcels included in ordinance BL 2022-1532, which extended the boundaries of the Urban Services District, be included on the tax rolls for 2022. Councilmember Bradford. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. So this was brought to my attention the week before Christmas that because of the timing of the bill passage and the 30-day requirement that it would, in fact, cause this not to go into effect January 1st of 2024 instead of January 1st, 2023. So I worked with council office, and this is just basically a repeat of what we had to do this time last year because of the same issue. So the intent is we want this to start this week and not next year so that these 12 parcels can go ahead and get the trash collection that they've been wanting.
Thank you. And you can clarify that this does not change the tax bill that they were sent last October. This will affect next October.
Correct.
Okay.
They'll put them on the next cycle.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We recommend approval. 9 in favor. Anyone not voting? 0 against. 0 not voting. Next, RS 2023-1935, sponsors Roten and Syracuse, approves amendment number 1 to the contract between the Metro government and Concentra Health Services for medical services. Do I have a motion? Any questions on this injured on duty program? Councilmember Sawara. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that this is a contract that's been in existence for about 4 years now, so I just wanted to know, looking at it, it looks as if this services is available during work hours. And I maybe this is a question for later, somebody can look into, but I'm just wondering, since we have a health department that is open during work hours, is there any reason why we have a separate entity seeing our staff during work hours? I can understand after hours, but I was just wondering, we're paying about $1 million a year, sort of, and there is a health department, and so just.
Certainly, we have someone who's approached the public table, so if you'll introduce yourself and respond, that'd be great.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Kane. I work with the Human Resources Department, and I'm an HR manager, and one of the divisions I manage is the Injury on Duty program. So I'll give you 2 answers. The amendment for you today is only speaking to the IOD clinic assisting the health department with their physicals to bring in additional support at the IOD clinic to do just that, to help fulfill some of these annual and new hire physicals for all the departments. Your question pertaining to open during work hours, the IOD clinic is the responsibility of the benefit board to provide medical care to the injured employees of Metro, and we have available to the Metro employees every Middle Tennessee hospital is in the network, including ERs. Most of your walk-in clinics, which are open several hours a day, are open to them as well. But we saw that the majority of treatment for employees was required during these hours of 7 to 4 o'clock. So the IOD clinic serves as a triage center for those employees. And so that has been the best times to provide the service to those injured employees is between those hours. We're always looking at the hours of when the triage is needed for those employees. And if, matter of fact, years ago, we had it from 8 to 5, and we recognized that with some of our departments that were open earlier, it was more beneficial to them to have it open at 7 a.m., so we adjusted the hours to accommodate those departments. But to answer, to maybe answer a question, an implied question is there medical services available to our employees even after these hours? Sure. They can go to any local emergency room after hours, and that is also picked up by the Injury on Duty program. That cost is covered as well.
And can you clarify if our health department could provide these services without this additional contract? That, I think, was part of the question as well.
At the time, no, there's no triage center for the health department to treat all these type of occupational injuries. They don't have that service at this time. I would have to go and ask additional questions to the benefit board as to whom can provide those services. But usually, from what I understand, I can't speak on behalf of the health department, but the health department is typically not set up to treat emergent care, to give like what I'm calling triage, or like what an emergency room would give, to give emergent care to employees. They don't have that mechanism today.
So if there's any way we can just, again, I know this is not the contract before us, it was just something that spurred out of looking at it, but if we can get about how many of our employees do use these services, and also to see if it's something that, I was just thinking we have an health department, we have a whole hospital that we're paying to, and then we also have this contract on the side. And I'm not saying anything, I'm just trying to understand the need for it. So maybe it's an answer for another day, but it's something that I'll be interested in finding
Sure,
out.
we can get you those numbers. We have a lot of detailed numbers of the employees that go, what departments, what type of injury. So we break that down, to the minute detail. So we can provide that information to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, that would be helpful. And I will say, I remember having this discussion 4 or 5 years ago. There is a council meeting or a committee meeting that goes through this logic, and perhaps Mr. Jameson can help me remember when that was, that I could direct you to watch the video.
It was before my time.
It was before your time, that's exactly right. So thank you if you can get that information to us. And Councilmember Hurt had a question. Councilmember Hurt.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You're absolutely right. I was the one that asked the question because I felt like we could use those services for Nashville General Hospital.
Exactly.
And Nashville General Hospital has also opened up some of those small emergency clinics like they have the one on Charlotte Avenue. So, I was trying to reach people during the holiday to find out if they could could help me remember what the response was, but again, it wasn't obviously a compelling argument to me because I came back with the same question again, and I think this contract is is $4 million and some like $4.3 million, and I agree that we're paying a hospital, and the one thing that we want to do is encourage our employees to go to our own hospitals so we can keep that money within the family. So I'm basically having the same concerns and questions.
So I'm not chair of this committee, so I don't know that I can ask this, but it may be appropriate to have, to help me here, council, someone do a little bit of homework to go back and provide us with the discussion that happened earlier, and then maybe if it's appropriate to have either the health committee or this committee look into that, just so we can answer those questions again for this new group.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director Darby's writing something down, so I'm going to assume we've made a note. Great. Okay, good questions. I appreciate the discussion. Any other questions on this resolution? Okay, if not, and we're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, we recommend approval, 9 in favor. Anyone not voting? 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. That brings us now to bills on second reading. First up is BL 2022-1630, sponsors Swope, Syracuse, and Hall. This amends Title II of the Metropolitan Code to create the Nashville Film and Television Advisory Board. I will point out that BL 2022-1631 is similar, and we have seen these before, so we may perhaps want to talk about them together. Councilmember Swope, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's appropriate, isn't it?
Yes.
At the behest of the mayor's administration, both myself and the sponsors of 1631 have agreed to defer both of these for 2 meetings, and we will have a confab with the mayor's office and appropriate sponsors in the meantime to yet again attempt to work out a commonality between these two.
We appreciate that. Great. Okay, so we have a motion for 2-meeting deferral and a second. And actually, I'm sure there's a motion from someone on the committee, so we'll consider that. Any other discussion on the 2-meeting deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We recommend approval of a 2-meeting deferral. So that brings us to BL 2022-1631. Do I have a, well, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Stiles, and then we'll ask for a motion to defer that one. Councilmember Stiles, any comments you want to make at this point?
Thank you, temporary chair. No, Councilmember Swope is correct. We have agreed to a 2-meeting deferral.
Great. So do I have an official motion for a 2-meeting deferral from someone on the committee and a second? Any discussion on a 2-meeting deferral? I will say thank you. I appreciate the effort, and I'm happy to participate in it as well. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of a 2-meeting deferral, say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? We recommend approval of the 2-meeting deferral. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Next is BL 2022-1632, sponsors Roten, Allen, Gamble, and others. This amends Title V of the Metro Code by adding a new section requiring the Metro government to adopt and maintain a fund balance reserve policy. This is the companion ordinance to the referendum that for the resolution that we are deferring, so they'll track together. We have a letter to approve from Councilmember Gamble, and I'm here as well. So do we have a motion to approve? Moved in second. Any discussion on this? Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions for the Finance Director sent to me by a constituent, and I want to make sure that I ask them. The first question is that the ordinance did say that there is a discretion by the Finance Director to increase by 3% over the 17%. The constituent wants to know, does that mean that the Finance Director can increase it up to 20%? Or is that 17.5%? That is the first question. And then the second question is, if the revenue projections are off and we're not able to meet that revenue projection, so are the choices keeping the 15% funding, or do we have to make the priority when we have a commitment for step raises? Will we consider those first before we consider the fund balance percentage balance? Okay.
I've turned on that mic. Director, if you can respond to both of those, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I heard the first question, but then I was asking Ms. Darby if I was allowed to respond, because your questions were specific to the policy resolution, not the code change. But she said I'm good. So I heard the first question, the 17% versus 20. That was in response to Councilmember Mendez's question. If we ever got into a extreme economic condition where that 17% didn't feel appropriate enough and there wasn't an opportunity to get it back to council, should the Finance Director have the ability to increase it another 3%? And so that was to scratch that itch. Yes, so it goes from 17 to 20 at the discretion of the Finance Director. I think the expectation would be to move through the process and get it codified, but it was to allow in case of extreme emergency. And the second question, I'm not sure I heard.
You can use your mic, please.
So the second question basically is trying to make sure that, you know how in the past we've promised raises, step raises to our employees, and something happened and we're not able to meet it. And we have often used fund balances to do that. Right, which is the practice that I think that we're trying to get away from. So this question basically is trying to say, before we consider the percentage that we want to preserve, would we make sure that all those step raises are taken care of first before we get to that percentage that we want to keep?
The fund balance calculation is born out of the prior year's, leftover, not leftover, unspent revenue minus expenses. So it's not contemplating the next year's budget. So when you're drafting the budget and creating the budget for the next year, it would include all operating costs. And so the calculation of fund balance wouldn't be a part of that. The number is what it is, just based on the estimate. If council decided they wanted to use fund balance to fund raises instead of making additional cuts under the proposed policy, I don't think that would be an allowable use. We've identified what an emergency is. I think maybe you could make a case if we were in a pandemic again, maybe you have a case for that, but for ongoing operating costs such as salaries, that wouldn't be an allowable use for an emergency fund balance.
Just a follow-up question. Even if that does not bring it lower than the 17 or 20%, would that still be allowable or it would not?
The allowable uses, if we're in excess of 17%, that we have in the policy is for capital, one-time capital, equipment purchases, or can't remember what the third one. Oh, the retirement of debt. So no. But in theory, if you were to choose that you wanted to retire debt, that might make the debt service payment in the operating budget lower. So you might
and
be
then
able
we
to
can
fund.
transfer it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that we have a workaround, that's a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Any other questions on the fund balance? Is that? I will say again how appreciative I am that we've worked through this so speedily, and I think it's a good tool for us to have. So if there are no other comments, we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Next is BL 2022-1633, sponsors Allen, Roten, Hurt, and O'Connell. This amends Title V of the Metropolitan Code to adopt a commercial property assessed clean energy and resilience program known as CPACER within Davidson County to be administered by the Office of the Metropolitan Trustee. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? And we've got Ms. Abkovitz here and Dr. Abkovitz here to answer any questions. If there are, this is an energy conservation program that hopefully will incentivize existing buildings to make energy improvements and also resiliency improvements. No questions? All right, seeing none, we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, we recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Next is BL 2022-1634, sponsors Allen, Roten, and Hurt. This approves standardized forms, agreements, and other documents to be utilized by the Metropolitan Trustee in administering the CPACER program. Do I have a motion? Out loud. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. And again, I want to thank Kendra Abkovitz for all the work she put in making these forms standardized but still applicable to Nashville, because that was a big lift. And also the trustee for working with us on that. If there are no other questions, we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. That's it for resolutions. Now we're on bills. BL 2022-1637, sponsors Withers, Roten, and Hurt. This approves a purchase and sale agreement between the Trust for Public Land and Metro Government for a parcel of property located in 1900 Forest Avenue. Excuse me. 1636. I'm sorry, that was taken off consent. Thank you. Back to BL 2023-1636, sponsors Johnston, Roten, Withers, and Hurt. This approves the Fourth Amendment to the lease agreement between the Metro Government and the Nashville Zoo for the conveyance of property via quitclaim to the Metropolitan Government and a participation agreement for the construction of a facility parking garage. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnston.
Thank you. So this lease was put into place in 1996. It's a 40-year lease for $40, meaning $1 per year. It has another 40-year extension at the end of that 40-year lease. What we are doing is accepting a quitclaim deed, meaning or transfer of property via quitclaim deed, meaning $0, so that we're not purchasing this. They are giving us what underneath the garage that is being built that we have already allocated $15 million to. Half of it is owned by the zoo, half of it is owned by parks. So in order for us to own the land underneath, which was the agreement, they have to convey the land to us. So that's what this is. It has 0 fiscal note to it. It's pretty simple. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We've got all kind of people here that can answer questions.
Thank you. And I know Rick Schwartz was here. I think I saw him in the back.
He had some stuff. I told him that I didn't think this was going to be a big deal, and so that I could handle it or Metro Legal or Finance could handle it, because he had some animals to take care of.
And I will acknowledge that he wrote me a very long and thoughtful email, which I appreciate tremendously, on a related but not necessarily a connected topic. So I appreciate his efforts on that behalf. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. I was the one that asked for it to be pulled. It seems fairly easy enough, but I did send some questions to the legal office, and I did get the response, but I decided to ask them for the sake of the viewing audience, and one of those questions has been answered, because if the zoo was leasing from Metro, my question was, how then are they transferring land to us if they're already leasing from us? And so the legal office already explained that it's because we own most of the property, but there's a part that we do not own, and that's what they're transferring to us, and that makes a lot of sense. And then the other part of it that I wanted to clarify is that we're putting $15 million into this, but there's a part of the lease agreements, the performance agreement, that says that all revenue from this property will go to the zoo. And so my question is, for everyone's sake, is what about the maintenance and the repairs and the costs associated to it? If they're keeping all the revenues, do they get to keep all the expenses as well? So if Ms. Darby wants to address.
Gotcha. Ms. Darby or Councilmember Johnston? Okay.
I can answer it really quickly.
All right, I think the administration table will give it a go, and then I'll come back to you, Councilmember Johnston.
Hi, Tara Ladd with Metro Legal. So for the maintenance, the zoo is going to be responsible for the ongoing maintenance throughout the term of the lease. And then also, just to put it out there, that our contribution will be $15 million. In return, we'll get almost a $38 million asset of that parking garage. And so no maintenance responsibility. That's all going to be on the zoo.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Johnston, anything you want to add?
Nope, that pretty much sums it up.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councilmember Suara?
No, bad.
Any other questions, any other council members? Thank you. All right, so we are now ready to vote on the property conveyance for the zoo. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, we recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Now, BL 2022-1637, sponsors Withers, Roten, and Hurt, approves a purchase and sale agreement between the Trust for Public Land and Metro Government for a parcel of property located at 1900 Forest Avenue for the purposes of expanding Lockland Springs Park. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Withers, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you so much, Councilmember Allen. Just wanted to thank Mayor Cooper's office. He had worked with me. I had a capital improvements budget request for $800,000 to help pay for the acquisition of this land, and that was funded in the fiscal year 21-22 capital spending plan. And so my request to Mayor Cooper was to do a little bit of a public-private partnership where we would ask community members to help raise the other half of the funds to acquire this land. We've been working with the homeowners who had just purchased it. They were amenable to doing this acquisition to put a conservation easement on it so that the land will remain public space. There's already a Lockland Springs Park that's there today that's kind of a learning lab, a natural environment learning lab. This will enable us to expand that and preserve that green space along the Lockland Springs stream bed, which starts up in Shelby Golf Course, then transferred through this private property, and then ends up in Lockland Springs Park at a historic site that is the genesis of the Lockland Springs neighborhood. So with this acquisition, we are able to maintain not only the full length of the stream bed itself, but also a lot of the rest of the green space along that route. Again, the request was to Mayor Cooper through the capital improvements budget for $800,000, which was funded, and we raised about the other $800,000 through private fundraising efforts. I also would like to thank, obviously, I think Cindy Harrison is here from Metro Parks. They've been a key player in considering that acquisition. Also have Noel Durant, who's here from the Trust for Public Land, which is the organization that has helped us to kind of structure that transaction. They've officially purchased it from the homeowner, and that's how they're able to sell it back to Metro at a significant discount from the appraised value of the property. But just wanted to give some of that background for that. And obviously I have Mr. Durant here, and as well as Cindy Harrison for Parks if there are any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions? Great job. That's exciting to hear that worked out. If there are no questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, we recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. I believe that is the end of our agenda. Yeah, great job. We're adjourned.